If you think losing money to closing costs is painful, wait till you find out what negative equity is, where when you sell your home, you don't even cover the cost and you actually have to present money to actually get out of your current home.
Welcome to the Physician Sense Podcast, a podcast designed specifically for physicians, offering a breakdown of complex financial topics to help you develop your financial IQ, further your financial journey, and improve your well-being. Whether you're a medical student, resident, fellow, or attending physician, you're sure to learn something new that will benefit your journey. And now, your hosts, Chad Chubb and Tyler Olson.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Physician Sense. I'm your co-host, Tyler Olson. I'm joined by my flower-covered, shirt-wearing, warm weather and cool weather friend, all-weather friend, Chad Chubb. Good to see you, man.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you for the very warm introduction.
Yeah. Well, yours are always better, but I'm trying to emulate you.
Good energy. I like it.
So I have a client who wanted me to share something. I shared this on X in May, I think it was. Yeah. So this is a cautionary tale and speaks to buying a home and the challenges of waiting on big life stuff. And I thought we could talk about that today.
Love it.
He graduated last year from training, started his new attending job shortly thereafter. He immediately bought a home, $1 million purchase price. New city, new job, no ties there. We were not working together at the time, for the record.
Better add in that disclosure to start.
Yeah. No, I have prospective clients who become clients and they wait to become clients until they bought the house. I've had that happen. And I'm like, well, I mean, to each their own. If you don't need me involved in the decision, that's fine. But they tell me, they're like, well, we bought the house and then we contacted you. Anyway, this was a similar situation for this doctor. 2 months in, he found out that the job was really, really toxic. Very unhappy. Not at all what it appeared to be. And he's got to get out. There's also a non-compete. The radius required him essentially to sell his house, which is really, really unfortunate. And for the record, I do not share client stories unless they tell me to. I used to ask permission, be like, hey, can I share your story? But I don't even like to do that now. I like maybe every once in a while. For the most part, I don't ask for it. But this person, he's like, you got to tell people because it's an important lesson to learn. And that is basically because he bought a home right away before he really understood that he was really going to stick with this job in this location. Now he's got about $100,000 in closing costs that he had to absorb. Because when you buy, you got closing costs on the buy side, which usually amount to around 2 to 3% of the purchase price. And then on the other hand, you're looking at on a sale, you have it even more because you're responsible for the commission to pay the realtor. Not going to dig into, for sale by owner, because that's an entirely different conversation. Most people are going to use a realtor, and they should. But you're going to pay 5 to 6% of the sale to that person and their office, and they split it with the buyer's agent. So the selling side is much more, 7, 8, 9%, depending on what the commission rate actually is. So together, you got about $100,000. This doctor, he's got about $100,000 in closing costs. And he's basically just starting, he's like back where he started from like a home buying perspective. So I want to talk like, what are your thoughts about this story? What are some lessons?
Yeah. Before we hit record, I shared with Tyler that this is a conversation that happens way too often. We, even in the past week, going back to May time frame as well, actually, we had a similar conversation with a client on, this one was a little bit different topic, but essentially it was a buy, sell, buy again. Home was too big. We're going to only do it for a few years and then we'll downsize. And we had to have that same conversation on closing costs are not a joke. and they add up quickly because, again, most physicians, whether it's the area that they live in or a little bit of keeping up with the Joneses, are likely probably buying larger homes, whether that's a 7-figure home like our example now or a high 6-figure home. It seems like in most parts of the country today, a high 6-figure home is like an average home, unfortunately, especially for our friends in Southern California or the Northeast where home prices are high. While some of you may listen to this and think, how can you just burn through $100,000? The reality is this is a conversation that happens quite a bit. And I'd say it's something that probably happens to more people around you than you would know, especially coming out of training. You had an interview, right? As I always joke, they promise you the floor seats for the Lakers game. You're all in. Everyone seems great and nice. You want to lay down roots in the community. You just rented. You moved from college to medical school to residency to fellowship. You're done with it. You're laying down the roots. And then you have the annoying financial advisors like Tyler and I that say, why don't you rent for maybe another 12 months, make sure everything sits in right? This is why. This is the horror story that happens. It happens more frequently than you would think. And this is why we note this. And I think even if you get one takeaway from today on what closing costs are, I think that's a big win. To sell a home, to buy a home, and even if you have to do that a few times in a quick order, this can burn through a lot of your hard work in terms of money that you've built up or home equity that you maybe built up. A lot of times it's probably what you save beforehand. It's not the equity because it's a short period of time. But yeah, unfortunately, not uncommon.
There are some exceptions that I'd like to lay out, and they all have to do with familiarity with the job and location. A lot of times when I post about this on Twitter, X, over the years, I almost always get some pushback like, but my situation is unique. Well, let's address those. Say you did residency somewhere, you went to do fellowship, and then you're offered a job where you did residency. That familiarity can help, where maybe you don't have to wait as long. But I still think that exception to me, I don't fully buy into that, because your experience as a trainee in a location, in a job environment, is going to be different from your experience as an attending. You're going to be exposed to different dynamics that you did not know existed. And it's not to say that you're like, oh, well, it's probably going to be awful. I'm just saying that you just don't know. And you can't know until you're living it, until you're in it and you've been in it for some time. And something around, I can't remember where I read this stat, but I know it to be true that around half of doctors, they leave their first attending job. Yeah. And so you got to be careful of that. That risk of that happening is not small. And it's also not to say that you won't leave your second one or your third one. Like sometimes doctors, I know doctors who have gone to one place and it didn't work out and they went to their second place. It doesn't mean that, oh, well, it's my second attending job, so that means that I should buy a house right away. The same rules apply. The clock starts over. And I mean that with all, like I mean to express compassion with all my heart, that I know that the waiting for these big life things is hard. You've been waiting long enough. But you got to be really careful about not just the financial costs, but also the possibility that because you commit to the house and you realize how expensive it's going to be to get out of it, that might compel you to just absorb a toxic situation and not leave. And that can be very, very dangerous to your health. So you got to be careful not to put yourself into a tough position like that. But yeah, if you know the people that are working there, that might be like, okay, maybe wait 6 months. Maybe. But see, I know doctors who have gone to work for someone that they knew and they're like, oh, they're a nice person. Actually, they're not. They're not. Like when the pressure is applied, when you're in the situation, all of a sudden you get a new version of this person and you're like, what happened to them? I thought that they were nice. Like I worked with them in this other situation, but they're like a completely different person. So you got to be careful. The one exception that I will buy into is you are moving home. You're going to move home. Like you're going to move to be with your family, and that's important to you, and you're not going to leave. And that dovetailed with either a non-existent non-compete or a non-compete that is reasonable, I'm okay buying a house out the gate. What do you think of that? Does that make sense?
Yeah. This is also a really good time to make sure that you have your contract reviewed by an attorney and make sure that you understand what your non-compete is. And if you go buy the McMansion, is there enough hospitals outside of that 5 or 10 mile radius where you can still drive to work from your beautiful McMansion that you just bought? If you just lost the entire area and if you lose that job, that non-compete covers pretty much anything that you can reasonably drive to without hating your life every single day that you have to get in your car and drive 2 hours to a hospital. That is important. You need to understand all these moving parts in here. The stat that I read, Tyler, you said this earlier, is 50% of physicians will change their first job in the first 2 to 3 years. Keep in mind that depending on how you run the numbers, most break evens on a home are anywhere from 4 to 7 years. Closing cost, we're noting 10% for this example, right? $100,000, $1 million. Some states, it could get as high as maybe 15%. And again, do 15% on $1 million. Just keep math easy. That's $150,000. Sure, if you get a few years in, you're starting to make up a little bit of that. But if 50% of the doctors leave in 2 to 3 years and the break even is 4 to 7, there is a lot of number crunching that needs to occur here. Now, one could argue, well, Chad, you just told me to rent for 12 months. So I've rented for 12 months, then I bought the home, and then I left my job a year later. Yes, that would also be a not ideal situation. But the odds of that, I'd think a year into it, knowing the culture, your work-life balance, the happiness of your family in a certain area, the schools, all the other big parts in there, you likely have a more comfortable level, between that renting for 12, sometimes we'll even say rent, 18 months. But yeah, I'm just adding more context to what you said. But I think the contract part's important there, and which is why you should always understand that non-compete and what that radius entails. Because if you live in a rural part of the country, you might be talking hours. Now, if you live in a more populated area, maybe it's a smaller non-compete, and you know that there's great hospital systems just on the other side of that non-compete. Maybe it's not nearly as stressful, but you should understand that as well before you go buy your home.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's really tough because someone, a doctor gets out of training and they're looking for stability. They're looking for autonomy in their life. And some people, this conversation doesn't, for some people, this conversation is not relevant because they enjoy renting. They don't want that in their life. I'd say the far majority want to be able to have the freedom to make updates on their home, to do the landscaping that they want on their property, to have, if you've got kids, to have space for them to run around. And so like a condo or an apartment that you rent may not be what you're looking for. And you're like, this is what I want. And like time does not stand still. So yeah, it's tough, but I think it's worth it. Even like with the decision to be like, I'm going to buy a home, when I don't just think I like this job, I'm already doing this job. And it's something that I can maintain, that I feel comfortable with. It's very supportive of good decision making. I think that like buying the home before you have that knowledge, it also has a decent chance of diminishing the quality of the decision itself. Like, and I'm not talking about whether you should buy it sooner or rent first. I mean, like that it's in the neighborhood that you want to live in. That it is like, that it's the type of home that works well with what you've learned about your work schedule and like, traffic from work to like where your home is. And like, if this is a new city and a new place, like I think to myself, years ago, we decided early on in our marriage, we decided to move to Chicago. And I grew up around Chicago. So I knew the city and I knew the suburbs and all that, but I did not I'd never lived in the city proper. I'd been out in the burbs. And so my exposure to it was like very shallow. But we're going to move into the city. What neighborhood do we pick? Anybody that knows Chicago knows that there are a lot of options, and each of those options have different pros and cons, but you don't know what those are until you're there. And so we decided to rent first. And I am so glad that we did, because I remember my first thought was like, well, River North, I think that's a nice neighborhood. And it is. But it's not at all, it doesn't all align with what our values are. But I didn't know that until actually we lived there for a while and figured out, nope, River North is not where we want to live. We ended up living up in Lakeview, a little bit farther north. So any of you that know Chicago know what I'm talking about. But we had to get there and experience it in order to improve the quality of the big decision. So it's worth it.
Yeah, well, just to add another great medical city, we did the same thing in Philly. We rented, and the goal was to see, we were going to rent for a year to say that we did the city thing. We live right in South Philly, actually right in the Italian market. And we thought, we're going to do this. We're going to move to the burbs then, do the family thing, right? Fell in love with the city, ended up buying in South Philly. Our first home, lived there for 10 years. And then we headed down to Tampa, but like, kind of the same idea in the sense of like, we had to rent to make sure. We wanted to rent just to get the experience, but then we fell in love with the city and we're like, we actually want to live in the city. And we did our thing there. I wanted to throw one more fun topic in there just to make sure if you were scared of losing money, you're going to be scared of even losing more money now. Remember too, that most parts of the country, a lot of parts, you would label the housing market as likely inflated, or if you bought in the most recent few years, it could have been inflated. If you think losing money to closing costs is painful, wait till you find out what negative equity is, where when you sell your home, you don't even cover the cost and you actually have to present money to actually get out of your current home. So we're talking about the closing costs, which is the transaction details. But if you bought a home that was in a very hot market, we've actually had a few clients in Southern California. We're talking like hundreds of thousands of dollars from what they paid to their current estimates right now. Now, they're not selling right now, but that's not uncommon. And if you want to know what pain is in the housing market, that can be really painful. So while our main thing and what most of you will likely see, let's just say the housing market stays neutral, doesn't go up, it doesn't go down, is a closing cost conversation. But we're right now at, I would argue, a higher point of the housing market. Now, again, it could keep going up, but it could start coming down. We're starting to see some of that in some parts of the country. That could be another big problem in there. So this is all the issues with short-term decisions that you have no control over that can go bad very quickly. And all of a sudden, especially early in your career, we now are digging ourselves out of some trouble. You may have used up some good funds that you've already built up. We could have, dug a bigger hole now. There's just a lot of big things you got to keep in mind. So, ideally, a lot of you won't have to go through this because you hear these types of conversations. But again, this is very common. And I bet any of you listening or watching right now have a friend or colleague that has shared this type of story with you, or you've heard it through the grapevine, at least, one sphere outside of your main circle of friends. It happens. And it happens a lot in the physician community because of how much time and effort you put in and not being able to lay down those roots. Like Tyler said, we get it. We fully support that. But we also don't want there to be a pain point in there. But we get the human side of laying down roots and done with renting, done with moving. We get it. But we also don't want you to get hurt through the home horror here that can occur.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's not likely to happen, but yeah, it's not a 0% chance. So yeah, doctors, please be intentional about this and get help, get perspective, and not from the headhunter who's getting you the job.
We talk about conflicts of interest a lot with financial planners and physicians. You should also remember there's other conflicts of interest. Let's also throw someone else under the bus. The mortgage broker is not your friend. When they tell you can buy a $4 million home, but you initially started your Zillow search at $1 million, they get paid higher commissions based on the size of that. Some people are not always your friends. Doesn't mean they're good or bad, but there's a conflict here. It's not just financial advisors. It's not just physicians, right? Be aware of your conflicts of interest.
That's actually one of the reasons why I've been working with Michael Zweisen consistently. Yeah. He consistently turns down, especially like refinance business, like refinancing, like, it's a numbers game of trying to figure out if it's worth it with the closing costs. And he consistently turns down business because it's not worth it for the client at the expense of his own business revenue. So if you are looking for someone that will not just try to sell you something just out of desperation, definitely you could check out our resources page on him, because he's been really great, very good resource. And there's others like him too. So but there are people, like, to your point, they're just like, hey, yeah, buy this house. Like, you can do it. Like, you got to be very, very careful. You want to involve people that you can tell have your best interest in mind.
Yeah, Michael's a good guy there. Again, more common than what most would probably believe, although I do think most of you probably heard this story. I think we covered it well. I think, the idea of closing cost, break-even points, contract reviews. Is there anything that we're missing? Renting for a prolonged period of time, if it makes sense, kind of the big takeaway in there.
Yeah, I think it's pretty well covered. I think the only thing to remain is, I guess there is one thing to say, that is that the home purchase, it needs to also fit in with your bigger picture plan. And this is another reason to wait, because a lot of jobs, the compensation is not clear at the outset. They'll tell you, this is your base salary. This is what your production bonus could be. This is what your quality bonus could be. When are you going to get it? Oh, well, it depends. There's a lot of unknowns in terms of real income for physician jobs these days. And so you want to also give yourself the time to understand what your income really is, so that when you go to establish, this is the price range we're going to look at for our home, it's based upon a lived income experience instead of just what you see on the contract. Because that also, I'd say more times than not, the income is different than what they thought it was going to be. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse, but it is never exactly what they thought it was going to be.
Yeah. So, you don't ever want to get into the spot of, I need my bonus to afford my home. Actually, a lot of times when we do our ratios, we don't even include bonus. Even if they're like, no, I'm guaranteed to make $100,000 per year in my bonus alone. We're like, we don't believe in the word guarantee. So let's assume you don't have it. What's it look like? And then the bonus comes in. Great. Perfect. But that's another great point to bring up. I like to add context. I know we said that this isn't that common. This tweet, which when we're recording this, it's only actually a few days old, but it's already above, just shy of 62,000 views. So this one definitely hits some spots. And I think some people have probably read this and be like, yeah, been there, done that. And again, this is only a few days. Now this episode will go live, a little bit after that, but we're only 3 days in and this thing's already sneaking up on 62,000 views. So this is, if you want to see the actual tweet, we should have it in the show notes below. But if not, check out Tyler's Twitter page. And then this is from May 16th when Tyler posted this. So it happens. It's sad. It happens. It's funny that you've had clients that bought the home and then asked to become a client. I feel like that actually happens quite a bit. And whether it's a home or other big money decisions, just in case you were going to poo-poo on this, we came in afterwards. So hopefully you like it. But yeah, it happens. It happens. So do your research. Don't be afraid of renting. I know it sucks to hear that when you're thinking, I just rented for the last 12 years. But maybe a little bit longer can save you a little bit. But to your point, Tyler, I love how you included sometimes it can make sense to jump right into it if you have a longer history somewhere, and even there, still be cautious. But this is a good one, my friend. You brought this one to the table today with a recent tweet, and I think this is going to be a great addition to the lineup. Anything else you want to add in closing?
Only that it was great to see you today.
It's always fun to see you, my friend. I love how we do our batches, so we get to hang out for a few hours when we get into recording mode. So as always, a pleasure, my friend. And I will catch you on the next episode.
Sounds good, man.
This This information is for general purposes only. This information is not intended to be a substitute for specific professional, financial, or tax advice, as individual concerns vary. Please see a financial professional, CPA, and/or an attorney in regards to your own individual situation. Wealth Wheels Advisory Services and Financial Planning offered through Vicus Capital Inc., a federally registered investment advisor. Olson Consulting LLC, offering advisory services and financial planning, is a state registered investment advisor.